Hello everyone and welcome back to another discussion video. This time we're going to be talking about the expectations for the upcoming Pokemon Day, Pokémon Presents 2024. This is going to be February 27th as always, and it's going to be the usual giant presents that Pokemon does, but there's a lot of stuff we can expect we're going to be getting in this. Generation 10 announcements, possibly Unova remakes, more Dex expansions, possibly even for Scarlet and Violet right now. Maybe we're not even going to be getting another mainline game this year, or Legends, Unova, and Johto games. Maybe Battle Facility returning. There's a whole lot of stuff for us to talk about, but before we get into that, we have a lot of other videos that are going to be covering each of those topics in far more detail, far more specifically. There was a bunch of other things, such as breaking down who was truly the most difficult champion. It's not who you expect it to be, and we have a lot more planned for the channel, such as a Unova hard mode playthrough, as well as Draft League competitive battle videos. So I think the first place for us to start off is with the mobile games that they really love harping on. Things such as Masters EX, which we know they're going to be getting a whole bunch of new sync pairs every single time they do the 5-star like legendary alternate costumes, which likely, considering this year, there's going to be the ruinous legendaries from Paldea, with the various Paldean characters getting special suits with those, like what they did with the Galarian birds last year. When it comes to Pokemon Unite, with last year the release of Zacian and then later the release of Mewtwo, and then Mega Mewtwo, we could be getting things such as the Tapus or the ruinous legendaries themselves in Pokemon Unite as new playable legendaries. Maybe even Zamazenta. After all, Zamazenta did get a bit of a buff with some more love this gen. Or even some non-legendary fun things like possibly Corviknight. Pokemon Go, they always love talking about Pokemon Go, especially at length. It's what, maybe a solid 10% of the entire runtime normally? Some Go Fest announcements, where everything's going to be, new mythical raids, new mythical research. Again, a lot of what we've seen before. They use Pokemon Day really as just a giant advertising billboard for these mobile side games. Things like Cafe Mix that really most of us kind of don't really care about, and it's not really about the mainline games anymore. Unfortunately, but we do still got to talk about them, because I know I would at least be a little guilty if I say, oh yeah, it's going to be all mainline games, and then it's like 95% mobile games, and nothing to do with the mainline games until the last 4 minutes. Because again, they always do that to us. And it's really, really a little bit sad. But onto more than just games, they do have those new anime series and that claymation stop-motion show that they've been doing. Probably going to get some more stuff on that, follow-ups for it. TCG packs, TCG revival things like they did last year with the original 151 Pokemon packs. I enjoy the old TCG art style. I'm not really one for playing TCG yet. Someday I hope to. Card pack openings in the future, possibly. But I do love the arts on those cards. I mean, there's a very good reason one of my friends got me all the Godzilla Magic the Gathering cards. I just love the way they look. So I might go out and buy some of them, maybe open some Elite Trainer boxes. But now we get into the mainline game. Predictions, theories, hypotheses, and that is whether we're going to get Generation 10 announcements, Generation 5 remakes, a new Legends game, or possibly a virtual console version of the original games. You know, not redone versions like Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, but 8-bit, old school Gen 1, old school Gen 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5. Or even some remakes of older spin-off games, things such as Pokemon Conquest or Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. Which, by the way, we have been doing a Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky Let's Play on the channel. We are going to 100% the game on a little bit of a hiatus for now, but it will be resuming soon. So stay tuned for that. So let's go into each of these a little bit more specifically, starting off with the Generation 5 remakes and the very likely potential of them being announced. In the most recent couple of weeks, Pokemon's official Twitter has actually been messaging out a number of things associated with Generation 5. Things such as Ilka rendition versions of the Reshiram ending scene from Pokemon Black and White. Before we really launch into this, because I know with the mention of Ilka, it's almost like speaking Voldemort's name, there's a lot we need to sort of unpack when it comes to Ilka. The original version of BDSP was actually far closer to what the community would have wanted out of a Generation 4 remake than what we actually ended up getting. The main reason for this was, with the very experimental, very innovative nature of Legends Arceus, Game Freak wanted a back-to-basics, safe, basically one-to-one remake of the original Diamond and Pearl games. In fact, the original was actually getting far closer to a Platinum version than anything, and Game Freak meddling is what basically decapitated that entire idea, reverting it into the, well, mess we kind of have now with BDSP. So, Ilka has been able to put out some quite well done games. It's just with regards to BDSP, that was Game Freak's horrible mishandling of it, and really, because of Legends Arceus' existence, it kind of had to be sacrificed. Without that limitation being imposed on it, a remake of Unova will be far more free to bring back Unova, add in Black and White 2 systems, or add in Black and White ideas into Black and White 2, and really be the kind of game we have been hoping for. However, that's all assuming we actually get a Gen 5 remake in Black and White or Black or White 2. There is all the possibility we could get a Legends Unova game. This is something we're going to be going into far more detail on in the future, but there's been a fair number of hints, things like Meloetta's original shoes actually being red, not the color they are now, Relic's song merely being a fragment of its original former glory, and even back as far as Legends Arceus itself, the original hero is an ancestor to Alder. This is something they've been setting up for a while, so very likely we will be getting much more to deal with a Legend-style game and involving Unova. Because it's worth mentioning, on top of all of this, that before Legends came out, they didn't, not necessarily shill, but they didn't go this aggressive in everything focusing on Sinnoh for Legends, as they have done with everything focusing on Unova for, well, the prelude to what we're getting this year. It's far outside of Pokemon's norms, especially when it comes to callbacks, and considering that for really, after Black and White and Generation 5 as a whole ended, Game Freak almost shunned and actively suppressed Generation 5. Pokemon in it very minimally got representation, if shown at all, in various media. Sword and Shield with the Gigantamax Garbodo was really the first time since Gen 5 concluded a Gen 5 Pokemon was featured prominently, and especially in a favorable light in any official capacity. So the very sudden shift into recognizing the following Unova has and capitalizing on that with things like the Indigo Disc shows that Game Freak is fully aware of the following Unova has, and they are going to be tapping into that, or at the very least it seems they're going to be tapping into that. And combining the love Legends Arceus got with the love that Generation 5 has would make a Generation 5 Legends game possibly getting the original form of Kyrem and maybe the founding of Unova in a game that would possibly top Legends and the original Black and White games combined in terms of collective love by the community. Though there is also the very high potential, instead of a Legends Unova game, we get Legends Johto with Celebi. Celebi is one of the few mythical Pokemon, in fact one of the few legendary adjacent Pokemon at all, that is strangely absent from Scarlet and Violet. Arceus itself was absent from Sword and Shield, as well as many of the other Sinnoh mythicals, and then Legends Arceus happened. So it is very possible that, well, Celebi is going to be released in a Legends JOHTO game focusing on Celebi. Celebi is a Pokemon that is already known for time travel, so it would allow for the similar plot device of you getting transported back in time to fix something in the past, as well as in addition to a very heavy Unova focus that's been following in the years since Sword and Shield. A very significant number of Hisuian forms are actually Pokemon, or at least ascended evolutions of Pokemon, are various Unovan Pokemon. This number is only surpassed by the number of Johtonian Pokemon that received ascended evolutions or received Hisuian forms in Legends Arceus. So there's this very Unova, very Johto focus that they've been doing. On top of that, the two Paradox branches, the future Swords of Justice and the past Legendary Beast Paradoxes, perhaps foreshadowing of the future with Unova and the past lies in Johto, which future and past was a motif that Black and White itself hammered on. As well as even in the weeks preceding this, there were posts made on Pokemon's Twitter of the original Gold, Silver, and Crystal encounters with Ho-Oh and Lugia, which preceded the Generation 5 Zekrom and Reshiram footage. There's also the very significant and stark lack of a Generation 2 remake in the same vein that Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee had for Pokemon Yellow. Kanto has been remade with Fire Red Leaf Green and then remade with Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, but there's been no similar thing for Johto since Heart Gold and Soul Silver well over a decade ago. Again, there is significantly more we're going to go into on this specific Legends Celebi topic, as well as a Legends Kyurem topic or Legends Meloetta topic in a future video. Recommend checking those out when they come out. When they will, you're gonna have to stay tuned and find out. But this is also not considering that they could do re-releases of spin-off games. In the recent months, they have refreshed the patent on the logo for the Mystery Dungeon games, meaning either they're just keeping things up to date, or they're planning on doing more with Mystery Dungeon. Relatively recently, we did get Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX, showing that Chunsoft is more than willing to have future collaborations and remakes of those other games, and Pokemon Company is themselves paying far more close attention to the actual community. They have commented on things such as, yes, we understand that the quality of the games has not been up to scratch, and they hope to rectify this, which likely means they could be even delaying future Pokemon game releases to give more development time, and instead filling in the gap, the void left by a lack of a mainline game, with spin-offs or Virtual Console Generation 1 through 5. I don't see Generation 5 Virtual Console games as likely, as I think that they are planning on saving Unova games for a full-fledged, full-blooded Unova remake, but remakes of, well, not even remakes, but just one-to-one ports of Generation 1 through Generation 4 seem far more likely, or at the very least Generation 1 through Generation 3. The main reason for this that could be a potential complication, though, is with the rewind feature. It would need to be something that is entirely separate from the Virtual Console due to the restore point system. It would be very easy to save scum, clone, duplicate, otherwise get your hands on multiple copies of specific individual Pokemon and exploit the system, rather than specially coding in just the Pokemon games a way to prevent that, as those are just fairly basic control schemes. More likely, it would be a singular box purchase of a collector's edition of sorts, a single game purchase that would include all of the Generation 1 through 4, well, 1 through 3, possibly 4, and possibly 5 games. Likely, I don't see these selling particularly well if it includes only Generation 1 through 3, but if it has Generation 5 and Generation 4, potentially even just purely Platinum, there would be a very significant swell of support for it. This is just crackpot theorizing, but considering that they do enjoy nostalgia baiting, it seems quite possible. And then we get to the last and one part that I think is a bit less certain than the others, and that is future Dex expansions of Scarlet and Violet. This goes hand in hand with the very likely release of the next Nintendo console coming out in 2025. The problem with releasing a Pokemon game is it releases in November, and they will need to be advertising the next Nintendo console mid-2024. This was something that happened, or at the very least, news of the 3DS happened, when Black and White was being released. Black and White sold, in a little over a year, less units than something like X and Y sold in its first week. It took, I believe, over 2 years for Black and White to reach the sale numbers that a game like X and Y did in its first week. Those games sold very, very poorly, and a large part of that came from the knowing of a future console releasing in relatively short order. That seems to be something Game Freak does not want to have a repeat of, especially with the same region. The region that they now know and understand there is an intense following for. That could potentially be one of the things that can shatter the sales record that Sword and Shield set. Which is why it seems likely that they would hold off a Generation 5 remake until the next console comes out, and let the sales of the console and the sales of the game itself go at the same time. What better way to capitalize on a new system than releasing a special Pokemon version of it, then advertising the new system with the ability to play the new Pokemon game? It's sort of a double-ended feedback. Whereas releasing a game on the Switch, when the next system is being advertised, they have to compete with that. And that's where these spin-offs seem a bit more likely. Things such as a Mystery Dungeon Sky remake, things such as a possible Pokemon Conquest remake, things such as virtual console versions of the original Pokemon games. We know that they released things such as Crystal for Virtual Console around the time that they were done doing games on the 3DS. So it's far from Game Freak's MO. And that would also allow them to delay Generation 10's remake. That would also allow them to delay Generation 10 until the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. Right now, we are at Pokemon's 28th anniversary. All we gotta do is wait 2 more years. Which, if 1 year is spent with no new mainline game, next year is spent with the Generation 5 remake, and then the year after that is the Gen 10 game. That would get us there nice and neatly. And what better way to fill time than with a number of spin-offs that were very well known to be very well loved. Or just prolonging the lifespan of Scarlet and Violet with future Dex expansions. The only reason I think that there could be potential future Dex expansions is it would help to pad out the remainder of the year. They can't really keep doing Terra Raid events for every single Legendary, they can't keep doing Terra Raids for every single starter, as interest in them is significantly waning, with Pokemon Home transferring become a thing, with the ability to simply catch them in the wild when it comes to the Indigo Disc Terrarium. A system like that with no new content or no battle facilities cannot really sustain people, but Dex expansions allowing for transfer in of other Pokemon that are fan favorites, things such as Togekiss, the various fossil Pokemon, that would prolong the lifespan, while giving additional time to finish developing the future games. But that is all that I have today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for tuning in. Once again, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more, comment below your thoughts on the video, and I will see you guys next time. I'd like to thank all of my channel members. Starting off with the Metal Machines, we have Evelyn, 8th Aegis of the Grand Master Sealing Cat Ouroboros, quite a mouthful of a name. Sanders Gaming, definitely not Alan. That guy Jared, Dragon Dance 05, Ash Ketchum 78, and Tag. At the Steel Commanders, we have JD Poo, our good friend Jade, and Mudkip. And lastly, our Kaiju Crushers with Unbound Legends in all caps and Michaela Yenma. Once again, thank you all. I quite literally could not do this without you, as members do help to fund the channel and help encourage me to do more experimental videos like this.